When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
I always feel like the intro kind of makes it seem like we take ourselves super seriously, no matter which intro. But
no, it's that hard guitar.
It's that heavy rock.
If it was a ukulele,
I think it's actually the only thing that adds legitimacy to the show. Is the intro. So.
All right, hi and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast, Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. I'm Cory. On my panel tonight are Lisa.
Hello.
Angela.
Hello.
Brandon.
Hi.
And of course, the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Hello.
We're here in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is March 16th. 2018. Our guest tonight is Jeanne Ikerd, former host of the Polyaskery Podcast and regular guest on practically all the shows. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Hello.
Everybody has to do the sexy hello, except us.
Maybe that was the best you could do, and that's okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the
confidence.
There's just a little pity confidence for you there. You're welcome.
Yeah, shit. So I guess a good place to start is just to get you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you joined the atheist and skeptic community.
Oh, well, that's a topic. I actually, I shattered my wrist years ago, and I'd been a really avid reader, and all of a sudden I could only do things with one hand. So I couldn't read a book and cook dinner at the same time. So I listened to a whole bunch of patio novels. And when I ran out of patio novels, I started looking for other things to listen to. And I found atheism and found a couple things, and the world kind of grew out from there. It was fairly easy to find once you get into the community.
Yeah, I suppose once you start chatting with people, it's easy to be part of a community.
Well, and a lot of podcasts that I listened to recommended other podcasts. So I'd check them out and see if that was my thing. And I just kind of kept going, maybe that's not my thing, but they recommended 2 other podcasts. So I'd listen to those and yeah.
And you had
just kind of fell into
your own for a while.
Oh, I tried. And it wasn't atheist specifically, but Shane and I were both atheists or are both atheists. But yeah, we talked about polyamory and open relationships from kind of a trying to help people sort out what they wanted and how to do it not badly kind of point of view. At least that was the intention. Yeah, that was short-lived, but fun.
How many episodes did you get through?
7, 8, maybe. I don't think we cracked 8. I've actually been on more podcasts as a guest, just because I'm willing to talk about open relationships or atheism with other people. So just because that podcast didn't succeed, I really have been on more guest spots. And I'm not on a lot. Like, don't let Cory fool you. Like, I'm not on every podcast by any means, nor do I want to be, nor am I a good subject for a lot of places. But but if anybody wants to sit down and talk about relationship stuff, like I'll do, or sex positivity, sex education. I'm not a really great educated person in a lot of ways, except I fucked up a lot. So there's that.
Was there an extra word there?
Probably.
I think fucking up is the only way to learn.
I think so too.
What other way is there to learn?
Right. I just try not to learn like too many things in one day. That's kind of my goal.
Some days I manage to learn a lot of things.
I know, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
But I pretty much figure if I learned one thing, I can get to go home now, right?
Yeah.
Like done my job. All set.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just gonna let that sit for a little while and
you've won
try
life.
not to do that again.
Try not to do it again.
Yep.
It's kind of like the ow. Okay, that does hurt.
Yeah. Don't dump boiling water down your body because 3rd-degree burns, like, kind of bad. Don't do that again.
Did you do that?
My dad did.
Oh no!
Oh my god,
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's how you learn how to like not handle hot things or be in the way of people cooking.
There's a limit. Like, I remember I had a friend, he was really like, let his kid learn and make his own mistakes. The kid's like 1, toddling around his business, and he was going to like push the hot water button to get tea out of the, the hot water out of the water cooler. I'm like, oh my God, you got to stop your son from doing that. He's like, no, man, he's got to learn. I'm like, no, you don't have to burn your 1-year-old and teach them not. You can just be like, no, don't touch that. Like, there's this other way of stimulating this response.
Yeah, or like, wait until they're 8. Yeah,
not 1. That's
right.
mean.
It's like the dad who throws his kid into the lake and says, figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, swim, bitch.
This is what drowning's like. Now this is what dying's like.
This is what sinking is like.
Yeah, Darwinism at its finest.
Wait, this is an option?
Not really.
I know, right?
Technically, no, Lisa.
Somebody asked me how my kid's doing at swimming lessons. I'm like, well, for the past 3 years, they ask him to put his head in the water, and he goes up to his upper lip, blows bubbles, and that's it. Like, that's been 3 years of progress. So I don't know. Like, what you're talking about is pretty foreign. Anyways, so Pop Rocks.
Pop rocks.
Pop
You
rocks.
want to talk
Pop
about
rocks.
pop rocks and blowjobs?
We could if you want. Should we save that for the end? Like,
I feel like that's
later,
more foreplay.
later in this podcast, we will be
I think
talking
that's
about
always an easy answer.
sexy uses for pop rocks, and then people will like listen
Just to hear it. And in fact, it turns out it's exactly as described,
Yeah.
and you tuned in for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
Well, and you're the only one that hasn't heard about it yet.
I'm
So,
sorry. See?
No, I hadn't heard either, Andrew. We're both
Okay.
sheltered.
oh,
Hear about stuff.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I never really imagined anybody did, though.
I really actually do think that it's kind of it's either a teenage dare or it's one of those epic rumors.
It's like a Tide Pod challenge. Like, not that many people are actually doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for show.
The cinnamon challenge.
What?
Yeah.
You haven't seen that? Like big tablespoons full of cinnamon. You're supposed to choke it down.
Why?
But it's hard because it's
supposed to get you high or something,
but it just looks it's just really hard to do.
and it can really hurt.
Well,
you.
also, like, have you ever put cinnamon in coffee?
asphyxiate.
It gets really clumpy at the bottom.
Yeah. Do kids really get asphyxiating?
I tried putting that
I don't
in
remember.
my coffee filter, and then it was super gross. It was not good.
Just use less. That's
Yeah.
like
And then-
a sprinkle, not like tablespoons.
The thing about cinnamon is that the flavor is so pervasive, if you will. It's so strong that when I used to work in the coffee shop, you had to grind more plain coffee after you ground cinnamon flavored coffee because it was so potent.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked in a
Angela's
coffee
still-
shop too.
Coffee shops are awesome.
Well, they can be, except when you get like the shitty people that want a skinny single mocha decaf cappuccino,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, that doesn't exist.
Those people are
Pick
you
a
either
thing.
love them or you hate them. But then you get the people that are like, dark roast has less caffeine than regular. I need to have my dark roast. And then they're really particular about that. Or, you always have those needy customers. And I think the moral of this story for people who haven't worked in a coffee shop is that everyone should at some point work in customer service, because sometimes there's people that are just a-holes for the sake of being a-holes because somebody peed in their cornflakes and they need someone to suffer. And it just happens to be the girl behind the counter.
I actually agree with you.
You are not incorrect.
I am not. I for 7 years, I worked my ass off. And
Jeez.
so much respect for people that work in customer service of any kind.
Yeah, I've got 30 years.
30? Do you still work in a coffee shop?
No. In customer service, I've
Customer
done 30
service?
years.
What
Yeah.
area of customer service do you still work in customer service now?
No, actually, I went to warehouse work, and now I'm on like the important people team.
Oh, fun! So you get to tell.
I know, right? So I make decisions for a company, like
that's
not
nice.
big decisions, but I'm part of the cog in the wheel.
Oh, that's
but, yeah,
fun.
no. But I worked at a grocery store, in kitchens, in a movie theater behind the counter. I've done I've cleaned hotel rooms. I've worked at a lot of places. I worked at a dry cleaners for a while. Yeah, I've done customers. I have been around shitty customers of all sorts. And
So you would have
guys are all one of them.
The gamut.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have seen the gamut of customers with those types of jobs.
No blue light in no UV light in the hotel room.
Actually, occasionally I have a flashlight that has a UV setting on it, and occasionally I will bring it with me when I have to do road trips. I'm just like, I'm not staying in this room. You have to find me another one.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
I know, but no, it's not.
So to bring it back to skepticism and atheism, were you always an atheist? Or
Oh, no. Was it? Wait, I'm sorry. Was there more to the question before I answer it? Okay. No, I grew up in the church, and I really tried hard to be a good Christian for a good chunk of my life.
okay.
But you guys are all from Canada, right?
Yeah.
So you
We're
get
not sure about
the
Lisa.
whole. But,
She's from somewhere else, but in Canada still.
I'm not from Saskatchewan.
She's out of this world, actually.
I'm out of this province.
She's too cool for school.
Yeah, poor honey. But
Okay, you know what?
get-
I'm not. Okay, just before you answer your question, I'm just going to say I'm not ashamed to not be from a province where I saw a guy today cross some railroad tracks, and he's really concerned about a train coming. So he pulled over on top of the fucking railroad tracks, stopped, and looked left and right. There's a cross. There's lights. There's a candy cane thing. But he was really worried, so he pulled up on the railroad tracks and looked to see if any, and waited a while, and then kept going. This is on Elphinstone, okay, people. So I am not ashamed to not be from this province. Continue. Sorry, please answer the question.
Fair.
No, okay, that's
That's not exclusive. That shit is not exclusive to this
But
province.
it fucking happened here today, okay, in front of me.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you're
continue. Sorry, Jeannie, please.
So we're all from here, yeah. Ish.
okay.
Well, there's our silent protagonist. Not Cory, David.
Amazing, Dave. So you were saying,
Let
Jeannie,
Jeannie answer the question.
So you get that. Yeah. If you've been other places where there's more civilization, if you will, that if you grew up around nature that will kill you pretty much any time it can,
yeah.
it's really, really hard to be religious because science is happening all the time.
It's an interesting insight. Like
Yeah,
bears.
so, yeah. Like bears,
Bears make you
mountains,
atheist.
in my case, they did.
Bears walking around converting people to atheism.
That's really interesting.
Have you heard the good word?
There's no God, and I'm going to eat you.
Yeah. Or I grew up in a sea town too, so it was a lot of, there were whales out in the bay and orca, and there were mountains with avalanches and things like that, and you just get trapped in your car for 2 hours and you're dead.
Right.
So it's really hard to not think that science has some validity.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I had grown up with religion as part of my background and my culture, like what I had been handed, it was something that I just kind of like dumped my backpack out. And that's kind of where like the poly thing came in too, is I just started saying like, okay, so am I straight because I'm straight, or am I straight because I've been told that I am?
Mm-hmm.
Am I religious because I'm religious, or is it because I've been told that I am? Am I monogamous because I'm monogamous, or because that's what's been handed to me?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start actually unpacking a lot of those things in your life and really looking at the things that really you want to keep maintaining, it did take me a little time to get rid of religion because it had been so strong, but it was something that had kind of been part of that shedding of things that were other people's assumptions about who I was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I came to atheism was, well, and I went through like a really shitty, shitty plus good paganism phase as well, because, that happens sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is a not religion that's my religion, but it's a different religion, but kind of, but not really. So
I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual phase.
Yeah, or just like there has to be something bigger, and then eventually I'm like, yeah, the bigger thing is science. Like that's
I call it the universe.
Yeah. It just like cosmos happens. Deal with it.
Nice.
Words to live by.
Yeah. I'm full of bumper stickers.
I like that.
Are you living in the Pacific Northwest now, or?
No, I'm in Vermont.
That's not bad.
I get Bernie, but there's no. There probably are in some places in Vermont, but there's really no need for an atheist community, which is why I found it online. Is because, I don't need the same kind of.
There's no Atheists of Vermont group?
Well, there might be, but it's kind of unnecessary because
you're already there.
You're in Vermont.
Fair.
Duh.
We alternate houses. It's Bob's on Mondays, and it's Jeannie's on every other Thursday.
Yeah, something like that. It's just it has a really strong even like the religious community has a really good, at least in my area. What the hell is their name? The church that's not a church.
Unitarians?
Yeah. It has like a very, very strong Unitarian presence. And this place is, it has a long history of having a Jewish community in it. And it has a lot of people that are very much into Eastern philosophy. And
not a lot of evangelical Christian types.
Nope. I mean, like they're rednecks. Like we get those. And I do have friends in the area that are like that still identify as Christian, but they don't like they're not hardcore.
Right.
So I don't fight the same things that people do when they're in some of the places that are really fucking shitty, like the South or, Texas or the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
I don't know what your equivalent is, but
Saskatchewan.
It's like the Bible Belt of Canada.
Ontario is very religious too, I'll tell you, like especially out of the big cities. It's very, very religious.
Rural Canada.
Yeah, all the rural areas.
Agriculture.
But I would say it's more like that, that prim, proper Mennonite type of thing rather than like a judgy sort of evangelical.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's judgy, but
in a different way.
A little bit more live, let live, I guess.
Not so much judgy hate, but judgy is like you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Depends how you were raised, I guess. Anyways, sorry, continue.
Oh, that's fair enough.
I have a question. How
Sure.
how if at all is atheism related to polyamory in your mind?
Oh, that's
Good question.
In my mind, yeah, that's a good question.
That's what they pay me the big bucks to be here for. I'm still waiting for my check, Cory.
Well, we did score a physicist for a reason.
I'm like, somebody's
Yeah,
chipping
that's
in
right.
for your coffee tonight.
No, I fucking made it myself.
In my mind, at least, I would say that atheism and poly or non-monogamy are related because it takes a little bit of mental fortitude to take yourself out of the expectations that other people have, like the life that you have grown up in.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to say it does not matter, or it matters more to me to be real and to be honest than it does to just passively live through that experience that somebody else has decided that you're going to have. So I think it is a different aspect of skepticism, but they are related in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a literalist.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like along the lines. My link would be like, well, for years, religion tells us this is how you have to behave sexually, right? Like this, this is your role as a man.
Yes.
This is your role as a woman. This is how your relationship has to look. This is the only time sex is allowed. So I went to Catholic school growing up, and they were very clear. I mean, they would taught teenagers never to use condoms, right? Like it was kind of absurd,
bad.
right? Yeah, condoms bad. If you get pregnant when you're 13, abortion bad. You need, I don't know, whatever, right? Like, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and then, yeah. Anyway, like, so I just wonder, so I'm more literal. I'm just like, well, I wonder if it's like, a departure from religious doctrine telling you what to do with your body and how to be a sexual being.
Yeah, that very much was part of it. And, in a way that, I'd worked for a movie theater for maybe like 3 years or 4 years before I found out that, according to the religious doctrine that I had been brought up in, that movies were a bad thing.
Oh, geez.
Oh, one of those.
Or it helped organize dances in junior high, but dancing was
Which is also
not.
a bad thing.
Yeah,
Did they film
absolutely.
Footloose in your town?
I'm just like, well, there's a whole lot of hypocrisy going on here, and it's Alaska, so you can either be like a pussy as a woman, or you can be like one of the participating members of the community. So
Yeah.
It wasn't really a choice. It was more like, well, do I want to participate? Do I want to be like, who do I want to be? And how do I want to be that person? And what ramifications am I willing to take socially or culturally to be closer to what I feel is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, in some way it really was and part of the reason that I did like the pagan thing for a bit was because it was a way of reappropriating sexual power.
Yeah.
And then I figured out that I didn't really need that part. I could just, like sex and define my own relationships, or just not like sex, and that would be fine too. But I didn't have to use somebody else's rules to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you deconverted, like, how did you feel about the period of time that you considered yourself a Christian? Like, did you feel like, shit, why didn't I become an atheist sooner? Did you feel like frustrated that you were kind of in the dark, so to speak, for an extended period of time? Or were you like grateful for that time that you believed in God, etc., and just kind of used it to kind of inform your life as an atheist and inform how you interacted with other Christians?
Well, since a lot of my my biological family is and has been Christian. My parents met at a Christian college.
Okay.
And most of their family still is very. I'm finding out more and more as the years go by that they're less dogmatic than I thought they were. Mm-hmm. But the culture that I was raised in was very strict in like if we went to grandma's house for summer vacation, we were going to church. Opting out was not an option. And so I really am culturally grateful for the background, because I think that everybody should have some sort of formal education in what religion or Christianity teaches, just to give you cultural context. Mm-hmm. So for that part, I'm grateful. But yeah, I was really kind of pissed when I figured out that I'd been kind of being lied to the whole time, and that it really is just. I'm swearing a lot.
No, you're totally allowed.
Really,
no worries.
Not fucking allowed, Jeannie.
So it's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but it's just a crock of shit. Mm-hmm. This whole thing is being. And granted, okay, so this is the 70s and 80s in Alaska, so not really a cultural revolution going on there. Just gonna say my parents both missed the 60s completely. They weren't hippies. They didn't protest. They weren't, advocates for, go Vietnam. They just missed it. I was so mad.
That decade is a thing for those people in the South.
Well, there were people all over the country doing activism things, or at least having an opinion, and nope, not my parents, neither of them.
Interesting. Was that an Alaska thing, or was it just your parents specifically?
Well, it was timing.
Okay.
My dad got out right before Vietnam. He'd served his time.
Okay.
I think the Cuban Missile Crisis was just ramping up in his last 3 weeks. My mom spent most of her college years being sheltered and poor in this Christian college town, being nurtured by people that really sheltered her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they kind of missed the whole thing. Mm-hmm. They kind of checked out in 1964 and checked back in at early 70, late 1969. They just missed it. So, the whole thing.
They waiting for Nixon?
God. Apparently.
This is bullshit. I'm going to wait for somebody a little more crotchety.
Yeah. I want Reagan, because he won't know what he's talking about tomorrow.
But if you're raised in a very conservative sort of non major metropolitan culture, I can see that. Not all young people are left leaning. Not all old people are inflexible geezers. There actually is variety in the human experience, and your parents represented a slice of humanity, right?
Well, at the time, and my dad actually, I'm going to say the 90s and 2000s, he really got way more progressive because my sister and I were both really challenging the fuck out of him and his expectations.
Nice.
And he almost got better, and then he met this nice Christian woman, and they prayed when they went on dates. And my mom is now, oh God, my mom, we hung out a couple of years ago for a while, and I was like, Mom, I think I'm an atheist. And she said, I think I am too.
That's nice.
So my sister, my mom, my nephew, please don't tell the father of her kids that that my sister's raising really nice atheists. But yeah, it really was a different culture, though, because it was so removed. So what you did for your neighbors. Like, no matter who they were, you pushed their car out, you shoveled their snow, you helped them hunt moose, you helped them package it. Like, I don't care who you are.
Yeah, we do that without the moose.
Yeah. Well,
I pushed a few people out last week.
We shoveled driveways and
we had
cars out of
we
the
have very little
amount
moose,
of
though.
snow.
Very little moose.
Yeah, like clean fish, change a tire. Like, so in some ways I was really lucky because as conservative as my dad was, he trained me to be functional as a human. Like, change the oil on your car. Yeah, you're 6. Like, let's go climb the roof and re-shingle the house.
Right.
So
that's nice to have. I don't know, as a female, to have a dad who is not necessarily adhering to traditional gender roles, but letting you do the dirty stuff and the typically male jobs like mowing the lawn or rototilling or whatever. It's nice to have somebody who doesn't shield you from that.
Right. Like, it's not boys' work. And, like, you know, thank goodness he didn't have a son. Like, maybe my life would have been different if he had, but he had 2 girls. So we were it.
I was like, well, I guess you're it. So.
But, well, and that was his method of babysitting, too, because once my parents got divorced, he's like, well, I have to go do this thing, so come do it with me.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's run the table saw.
Don't cut off your fingers.
Scott.
You still have all your digits.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, in a lot of ways, as frustrating as that part of my life was with religion, my dad didn't conform to any of that. So it really stumps me that he's, you know, I actually asked him, I was like, hey Dad, like, do you really believe in the 70 creation? Do you really believe in like biblical timeline? And he said yes. I was like, wow, that's really weird. I thought you were so much more scientific minded. And it stumped me because this is, and maybe it's him regressing a little bit into a comfort zone.
There's a reason why religions push so hard for people to have families and to raise their children in a church, right? Because and there's a reason why McDonald's likes to make commercials with Ronald McDonald, you know, with that are aimed towards children, right? Because I mean, you know, if you can invoke those childhood memories in somebody, like this is the, you know, the comforting, the goodness of you know what I remember as a child, you got people for life. So if religion can instill that familiarity in you, that sense of, oh, this is how things are supposed to be from your childhood, I think that's very powerful. Right? Like,
yeah, because it's a tradition and it's also a shared experience type thing. Like those things are very compelling. Like the songs that you sing, the gatherings, of, like the church services, and
not a lot of people raised as atheists become very religious. I mean, some do, I'm sure, but not many. Very like it's.
Yeah, I think the number's pretty small. Hey,
I don't know. Like my son's 6, and he's like, "Mom, my friend at school said something about God today." I'm like, okay, well, what do you think about that? He's like, I don't believe in God. I'm like, okay. Like, like that's dumb.
Yeah.
No.
You do you, baby.
yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I've got a question. Sorry, tell me to like fuck off if this question sucks.
I will. Don't worry.
It may or may not involve pop rocks.
There's no pop rock. This is an earnest question.
Not yet.
It's an earnest question.
We're not ready for that yet. It's too soon.
Does the flavor of pop rocks? No, I'm kidding. No.
Orange. Do not go for grape.
Oh, no grape. Okay.
Noted.
My question is, no, sorry. I just want to know, should everybody be polyamorous in your mind, or should everyone go that path? Is that for everyone?
Oh, fuck no.
Okay.
Oh, God. No. This is not for everybody.
Okay.
It's really, really hard. And some people are monogamous or should be monogamous. And some people should be poly but aren't. But I think that a lot of the things that the queer community and the poly community or the non-monogamous community can teach people who want to be monogamous is how to have better relationships.
So what do you mean by that?
I think that, so there are two heterosexual, this is, for instance, monogamous people get together, they go on a date, and there's a presumption of what the sex is going to look like. Right?
Okay.
Pop rocks. Yeah. Got it. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm done. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like
what
there's
counts
a
as
progression.
sex? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Holding hands too
Okay.
long.
So.
Which is why people ask lesbians stupid questions like, "How can you even have sex if you're lesbian?" You know that. Yeah, I get it because there's there's stereotypes and norms.
No, I thought your question was going to be like, "Where's your U-Haul?"
Hey, the back's good for something.
No, it's not.
Is that a reference to like my sister says? Like my sister's a lesbian. She says that like the big joke is, "What does a lesbian bring to the second date?" A U-Haul?
Yeah, a U-Haul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they move in together very quickly. They get very serious. Anyways, continue.
Okay.
I hadn't heard that.
So in general, when queer people get together and have queer sex, there really is much more of a conversation like, hey, so
What do you like?
Yeah, like I would really like to fist you tonight. How do you feel about that? So
There's no rules, right? Because you're making it up.
It's
right,
a little less
because
clear cut than tab A into slot B.
Yeah.
Right. And just like I'm going to shove at you for like 45 minutes ish if I can make it, and you're going to pretend it's fine.
We're both going to pretend it's fine.
I know, right?
And then we're going to go to sleep.
Right.
Or watch sports highlights.
This is fine.
Like
Everything's
who's
fine.
like we're gonna get up, somebody's gonna get water, somebody else is gonna order Chinese food, like it'll be so when you're talking about queer sex, like you're actually talking like no, I would really like to like do the thing with you tonight, and somebody else says like, yeah, maybe that's not my thing, but maybe we could negotiate around that. So in that way, I think that queer relationships have that thing to teach to straight people about how to have better sex.
And the communication around that. And just what are you into? And
just putting
okay?
down the expectations just get reduced to let's just talk about it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So in the same way, I think that poly relationships or non-monogamous relationships have that same thing to teach is
because you can't really learn a routine.
There is no we just we meet, we date for 3 months, we get married, we live happily ever after. That doesn't work. Okay, so what happens if somebody gets old? So what happens when somebody gets in a car wreck? What happens if somebody finds somebody else that they're interested in? How do we negotiate around that? Like, just presuppose that you're not going to be with that same person with that same type of energy for the rest of your existence. But if you want to keep that relationship, then you talk about it first.
Yeah.
And say so here's the deal. You find somebody you're interested in. You tell me about it ahead of time. This is just an example. Maybe I meet the person, maybe I don't. That's kind of up to each of the people involved, and all 3 people or 4 people or 8 people, whatever, have to be okay with whatever that situation is. Because often, and this is a tangent, often the extra person tends to get left out of whatever that dialogue is. And that other person has to be included to make it actually work.
Is that, so that's would you say that's a key of this type of relationship, the communication, this open communication? That's what differentiates this from, say, supposedly monogamous people who are cheating and not communicating that this is happening with their partners. Yeah.
Right. Because somebody has a need that is not being met. They're not being honest with themselves about what's not being met or why. They're not telling their partner what they can do about it to fix that. And they're not saying, and here's this other thing that I might be interested in doing. How do you feel about that? They're just going out and cheating. And that's not funny.
No.
That's a betrayal.
Yes. So yeah, if you can put like all of this stuff down ahead of time, or at least be talking about it continually, you're going to have a much better relationship, whether you're monogamous or not. And just saying like, hey, so is it okay if I look at this other person and say they have a great ass, and you're not going to get crazy about that? Like, would that be okay?
I've heard this in a little more restricted form, where it's the 3-column chart. It's the will do, will try, or sorry, want to, will do, won't do.
Yes.
Sir, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
That's what she's here for, I
Right.
think.
Okay. Thank you.
I grant you permission.
Thank you, Cory. You're the best. So awesome. Oh my God. Okay. No. So, okay. Does a typical poly relationship, is that like a couple?
Oh, wait.
Then,
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
There is no typical poly relationship.
That's what I asked. Yeah, I know. But I've seen a lot of, like, Cory posted a video like maybe 6 months ago, a guy talking about, he's in a long-term relationship with his partner, but then they decided to be to like have sex with other people, but they are still primarily each other's partner, but they're open about having sex with other people, which are not, that's more sex based. It's not the emotional part of the relationship.
Right.
Is that what you typically see, or no? I know there's no typical, but what's typical?
I can think of a couple I've observed.
What's the most typical?
What does the distribution look like if you bin based on,
How can I box this?
Yeah,
And that's not
I think
the
you
verb,
just
that's the
answered your own
concept.
question. No, they're okay. Actually the most typical thing is people fucking up and trying it out and deciding like, well, this fucking sucks because I can't do this, because they haven't kind of done the homework behind it. So the most common thing to see is people not doing it in a good way.
like in what results?
Doing it. Shitty breakups, the community, fighting over friends, like, I'm not going to say hatred, but that can happen too. Just like a really disproportionate. Like, I had this expectation of you going into this thing, and you didn't meet those, but didn't express them. So you did this incorrectly. It's more like that sort of dynamic.
So people are coming. Sorry. So people are coming at it from like an open, like they're still being open that this is what's going on, and yet they're finding that it's not working for them.
Right, because they haven't been honest, like really honest with like what they need. They can't say, like, I need you to be home every night right now. Or like Thursdays, like I want those to be our days. Like, please don't schedule anything on those days. Like they can't tell the other person what they actually want. And they can't say why. So they can't say things like, it bothers me to see you holding hands with the other person in public. Can you not do that until we've had more discussion about this? But then you have to go back and unpack, why does it bother you to see that other person holding somebody else in public?
Right.
So it really, really comes down to like a really brutal of both being honest with yourself and being honest with the other person. And sometimes, like, I've heard people that do things like, you can fuck anybody you want to, she just can't be prettier than me. And I don't want to hear about it. Like, to me, that's kind of a level of cheating, but that's my own personal judgment that I put on that. Mm-hmm. For some people it works, and then they find other people. But within monogamy is much more black and white, and poly or non-monogamy is much more nuanced. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like you just go join the poly crowd and then you're in. It's not like you're heterosexual and you're in. Mm-hmm. It's you have to go figure out, okay, so I need to go find the other people that also can work within the limits that work for me, work with them, work with the other people involved. So, yeah, really, this is a complete myth that I will bust right now, is a lot of times non-monogamous people don't have more sex. They have less because our criteria is much more picky. And if you add anything else on top of it, like kinky or gender issues, like your dating pool gets really tiny very fast.
So do you get people is it possible do you get people in a relationship where they have two or more serious emotional partners? Like, do you have?
Oh, yeah.
I mean? Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, well, and so this is a difference between different types of non-monogamy, is that some people really just are in it for the sex, and that's how they navigate their relationship with each other. Is we don't have an emotional relationship with anybody that we're involved in. But most, I would say, poly people probably do or should have emotional relationships. And that's part of it, is pick any person in any of your past. Have they ever been everything for you? You wanted to go out dancing, dancer, but you have you're a museum kind of going guy. Like, you want to go look at some really, really pretty art, but your partner doesn't. So you find those other friends. And so poly or non-monogamy it doesn't expect that one person to be everything for you. It just expects them to be some things for you. If you have that primarily two-way dynamic that also includes other people. And then there's another version of non-monogamy that includes, well, this is my art-going friend. This is my dancing friend. This is my we do fine foods friend. This is my snuggle friend. This is my we fuck each other's brains out friend. So
that one doesn't come out in public.
Maybe yours doesn't, but
well, I was gonna say,
alrighty then.
That might be your kinky friend too, and maybe you do go out in public.
It's interesting that you talk about with not people who are non-monogamous, and somebody from your past isn't everything or wasn't everything. I think it's even within monogamy, there is that aspect of things. There's your monogamous partner isn't necessarily going to be everything for you.
Well, for some people they are. But I would say that for the majority of people that are monogamous, they probably aren't.
Yeah.
No, but I have, sorry, but I have friends that so if my boyfriend doesn't want to, be on an atheist podcast, I have friends that I do that with, but with the exception of me and Angela, we never have sex, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not yet, but
with that voice,
maybe before too long.
Lisa, with that voice, it's only a matter of time.
That's for a different podcast.
No, but sorry, but seriously though, I have friends that meet emotional needs that I have and interests that I have, but I don't, but it's not a sexual relationship.
Right, but it still is a relationship.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's not. So, I would say if you the only real serious emotional relationship you have is with one other person, that's
a worrisome.
That's a pretty fucking pathetic.
That's like a Stockholm syndrome sort of thing. I don't think that doesn't sound healthy to me.
Without them.
That doesn't sound healthy to me.
It's a codependence that's not necessarily sustainable for long periods of time.
Some people can do it, and I've seen it, but it's really rare. More often that is correct. It's a weird codependence that's kind of like, wow, you need to get out of the house more.
Yeah.
Can I ask, have you met any monogamists who you just you look at them and just no, you're not a monogamous. You may be in a monogamous relationship, you're just Not willing to change yet.
Oh, is there there's gaydar? Is there like
She's
polydar? Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, yeah.
Polydar, yes.
Yeah. More than I can count on one hand. I will honestly tell you that. Probably
Really?
more than two.
How
Oh,
can
yeah.
you tell? Is it just an instinct thing or what?
I don't know. I think it's more. I know that they're smart. I know that they're willing to work on things, and I will still tell people, like, here's an option you might not have thought of, and it might not be for you. And I'm not trying to push you into this, but you might want to like roll that around for a little bit, because I really do think that most people intrinsically are probably not monogamous. I think it is much more rare that people are.
Mm-hmm.
So you think it's kind of something that we've all just adapted to because it's what's been dictated
Socially
by society,
acceptable.
kind of thing?
Yeah, since the 50s.
Well, I think statistically, amongst animals, monogamy is the outlier.
Right. Yeah.
Did you guys all listen to my podcast with Cory?
The Skeptic
Earlier.
Voices episode?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I don't listen to
What?
Cory shit.
Yeah, he's boring. Don't worry about
It's
it.
true.
No, actually, no, you're not.
Most monogamous
no,
stuff,
no,
like
no.
those penguins.
Yeah, actually, I made the same point. Is historically and biologically, it's been much more recent that we've had this expectation of monogamy, in the way that we define it right now. That most men had, lovers, sometimes multiple wives. Sometimes women had multiple husbands, but not usually. Sometimes women had
A pool
lovers. Yeah, the cabana boy. Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
boy. Yup.
I'm a fan of the cougar. Go Cougars. That's probably a sports team somewhere.
Actually, the U of R.
Yeah, our local
the
university
Cougars.
are the Cougars.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I wonder,
Go ahead.
like, do you think that the instance of men proclaiming themselves as polyamorous just because they want to stray from their partner is a common thing, or is that, or do you think that men who do that are less like? Does that happen a lot? I guess is the right question.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. I have met fewer men that didn't have to be like that wasn't their first thought.
Okay.
Let's just say that I think in my experience, men either like stay there or they cheat. But in my experience, that's mostly been women who have been like, yeah, let's just like fuck some people.
That's interesting.
So, okay, that's interesting.
I have seen a couple people on Facebook come out as poly, and it's been like,
that's hard to do.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
but they were
I'm even pretty like subtle about it, except for podcasting.
having a podcast and talking about it on a bunch of other podcasts.
Well, but it doesn't show up on my it doesn't show up on my Facebook page very often.
Yeah.
So,
Because-
how's that going to affect our ad campaign?
It's fine. It's fine. It's going to be fine.
I want to make a plaster my ass kind of joke, but I can't think of one right now. Like ad campaign.
It's Facebook, not Assbook.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, it fails either way. Anyway, keep going.
I just
Where are you going?
the people that I saw declare themselves as poly on Facebook were men. So, and one of the things that my partner thought was that maybe they were just interested in having sex with different people than they were married to. And I was like, well, I can't necessarily rule that out. I mean, I don't know these people. Like,
Yeah, but wanting to have sex with other people, isn't that the definition of being poly? If you want to do such a thing, and that's what would work for you?
Yeah, I think that's slightly different. Wanting to have sex with other people.
Explain this to me.
I don't define myself as polyamorous, but there's been multiple women I wanted to have sex with. So,
right?
Yeah,
because you're human.
So explain this to me then. I don't understand. I thought I understood.
It's probably the idea of whether or not you feel you can pursue multiple relationships successfully.
So is this the difference between wanting it and planning to do it?
No.
Then I don't understand.
Say so.
Or the difference between wanting relationships and wanting sex.
But I'm hearing from Jeannie that it can be whatever one. You can have multiple emotional relationships, or you can have multiple sexual relationships only, or some emotional and some sexual. I mean, it seems to be.
Okay, so there is a difference between non-monogamy, which is just not being monogamous, which I would say that every person in this room that I'm talking to right now is non-monogamous or has been. Yeah, no, is monogamous. No. Have any of you ever been with one partner
for your whole life?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are definition. Like you are completely, literally non-monogamous.
Of course, right.
Because there is that one thing.
Yeah, like when the average person breaks up with someone, they don't say, "Oh, I'll." they might feel I'm going to never find someone else, but
the rest of my life.
No,
I'll never find anyone else.
or I choose to never because that was it for me. Like, anyways.
Yeah. Most people are just like, all right, so like breaking up period, heartbreak happens. What's next?
Now what?
Yeah. So
Tinder,
little black book,
then Tinder,
swipe, right.
Plenty of Fish was the deal when I was single. That was it.
Yeah, that was after my time.
No, it's not nice.
Yeah, no, it was awful when I was single too. It was.
I've never done a dating site.
Oh, they're bad.
You're not missing much.
No. Yeah, I kind of. That's why I've never done a dating site.
Sorry.
Some people have better luck than others.
Okay, so there's a difference between like monogamy, actual monogamy, and then non-monogamous relationships and serial monogamy. And then poly relationships is just a subsect of non-monogamous relationships. So some people...
Can you draw me a Venn diagram?
I feel like we need a chart.
It's like a timeline.
I've got books to recommend. It's fine.
There we go.
I can draw you a pie chart.
Can you make some explanations?
I love you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. You just like that.
I'm doing it right now.
Wait. What kind of pie chart are you talking about?
Oh, you'll find out.
It's cherry pie. Or cheesecake.
You're gonna have some cherry
I don't
pie.
discriminate when it comes to pie.
I don't discriminate when it comes to cheesecake.
I only like the uncooked stuff.
Sorry, can you now explain your words more? Angela, stop drawing pies. Let Jeannie explain her words because I'm trying to understand things. Fuck,
Okay.
Can't take you out,
I didn't realize Angela was going to be the authority on this subject and the dirty talk.
You don't know me, Cory.
Apparently.
We've been making these.
I come across as this like married stay-at-home mom.
We've been making these assertions about her voice for months.
Yeah.
We knew.
If I can help bring out the bad girl in this, like I'm happy. So to get back to this, if you look at this as a chart thing, so you've got monogamy and non-monogamy, and most people fall under the non-monogamy thing, but there are other ways of doing monogamish, which is a Dan Savage.
Monogamish.
Nice. Well, it is. Like, that's serial monogamy. Like, you're monogamish, or, like, you're monogamous mostly, but with, like, maybe a hall pass. So that's not really non-monogamy. But then within non-monogamy, you have, like, poly relationships, swinger relationships. You can have people that are, I call them, and I think I got this from, Tristan Taramino, Monopoly. So it's monopoly. So one person is mono, fine with it, says like, yep, go out and you do you have fun. And so it's a monopoly relationship. One person is poly, one person is not. It can be sexual, it can be emotional, it can be live-in, it can be like broadly defined, but it has to be okay with everybody involved. So
what's your take on the term heterosexual life partner?
That sounds boring.
I've usually heard it used in...
I only eat vanilla ice cream.
Well, no, vanilla's good.
No, heterosexual life partners...
You're making me eat pistachio.
With whipped cream.
No, I follow that, but heterosexual
sprinkles.
life partner is a term used for usually for two guys who are such close friends they might as well be married. But neither of them is likely gay.
Girls use that term as well sometimes. Yeah. They just really like hanging out with each other.
So they're bros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They spot each other at the gym.
She hasn't finished answering her question.
That's true.
So much derailing.
No, we're on track right here.
Have you listened to our podcast before?
Yes. Yes, often. I'm sorry.
On track is
for me, like on my own behalf. I'm sorry.
I listened to your podcast and I'm sorry.
Or rather,
Worst
you owe me an
ever.
apology.
I have to learn to say it correctly. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Good Canadian.
Sorry.
You're almost Canadian here. You're in Vermont. Anyway, continue.
I'm sorry.
We have a government-mandated quota. Thank you for the help.
Jesus.
So what were we talking about?
I don't
Heterosexual
know.
life partners?
But we were talking about monopoly.
Yeah, no.
Monopoly.
I get it. I know.
We can talk about like whatever it is the fuck you want to talk about. I've had good partners that are, I call them formers, that are people that are, I still consider that I have a relationship with. We just aren't sexual. Mm-hmm. So, we call each other when trouble happens and, hey, I need an ear. And we're still partners. We're still in a relationship. We're just not having sex. So that's part of my definition of what my poly looks like. And one of my, I would consider life partners is somebody that will inherit everything that I own, but is also going to be responsible for unplugging me. With my full family's permission. Like, she is the keeper of the person that will take care of my cat when I die and make that decision and make sure that I'm not stuck in a ground full of formaldehyde. And we've never had a sexual relationship, and we won't. And she's my partner too. So I think that, I guess my mission, my hope is that people start defining their own relationships in a way that's a little bit more broad.
Yeah.
And be able to look at your friend and say, I have this, like, we are in a relationship. It may not be sexual. It may not be romantic. It may not be financial, but we are in a relationship, and I choose to be in this relationship with you.
I think that's a really interesting and positive way to look at it. It's a good takeaway because sometimes when you're steeped in fundamental religion, it's hard to deprogram yourself. It's really hard to love, and it's really hard to feel free to define people in those ways. And it's like, even
just outside of the boxes, take the boxes away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just to have those meaningful relationships with people, like you said, with people that you might not be sexual with, but just have, like a heterosexual life partner, somebody that will unplug you and refuse to have you pumped full of formaldehyde.
Yes.
It's interesting. I mean, for me, because I was steeped in religion for 20 years, and then I eventually got out of it, and it takes a long time. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a period of time where you're not, like, you're still an atheist, but I mean, it's a spectrum that you run the gamut.
There's still some things you can't let go of.
Yeah.
Quite yet. Yeah.
And there's things that
like caring about what happens to your body after you die.
Totally.
Ditch.
I just want
to
be
go to
planted
Bonnie
in
Farm.
Bonnie Farm? Yeah.
Like the cemetery forest thing?
Yeah. Like, I want to be dumped half naked in a half pool of moldy water with 2 rings and a pair of under. Like, I don't care. Just, like, use me for forensic science. Like, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Oh, one of those body farms. Okay.
I want to be put in a burial pod and have a tree planted on top of my head or whatever part of me is closest to the surface so that I can feed life.
Yeah.
After.
Give back.
Yeah.
If I wasn't just planning on donating my body to science, I'd do something like that too.
I want to do both of those things. After you're done looking at my innards, put me in a burial pod and plant a fucking maple tree on my head.
Aww.
And with that note, let's do a quick ad break. We'll come back with Jeanne Ikerd right away here
for Angela's burial
in
pods.
about, I think, 2 minutes.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/brainstorm podcast gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians and everyone else to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. Take the pledge at protruthpledge.org.
We take you now to a conversation being shouted across a hillside.
What?
I said I'm trying to come up with a promo for this podcast.
What podcast?
The Geologic Podcast.
What?
The Geologic Podcast.
Oh, Harab's pointless meanderings, skeptical observations, ridiculous musical interludes, and not a hint of geology.
Well,
alright, maybe a little bit of geology, but it's not worth it.
Ah, come on. He's got the religious moron of the week. Geo's mom reads Jay-Z lyrics.
Pointless.
Ask George.
Oh, who cares what the bastard thinks?
Interesting fauna.
Oh, great.
The horoscope.
Garbage.
Not the Bible.
Boring garbage.
Misinformed science.
Stupid garbage.
True adventures of the Philadelphia Funk Authority.
Ooh, white Ukrainian boy playing drums in a funk band. Must be fascinating.
What, none of that is appealing?
Not even a wee bit.
Great. Don't tune in then.
I won't.
Fine.
Fine.
Great.
Great.
Fine.
Great.
Great.
You said that already. The Geologic Podcast. Pointless, but free. GeologicPodcast.com.
Okay, so we're back.
We're back.
We're back.
As a guest, I'm going to officially state for the record that it really sucks that I get to watch you guys interact, but I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We were talking about pop rock.
The whole time.
Entire time.
Party on.
Totally.
Okay, so I originally had a plan for this segment, but
And it went awry.
yeah, I drove truck for my dad all week because he came down with a lung infection, so I didn't have any time to do anything.
Is he doing any better?
He's quite a bit better today.
Good.
So
Good.
Corey is like the nicest
Super son.
nicest guy that doesn't
he
go to
pays
church.
me. I don't do it for free.
And suddenly all down the tube.
Corey's actually a dick.
He puts a cold, heartless front out there
to hide his inner cold, heartless front.
but he's actually a big softy underneath.
Fake softy.
He's a softy.
A fake softy sounds like a dessert
It does.
or a
Like
something
whipped cream
like,
base.
It sounds like it's something that I need to try.
Yummy.
It also,
I mean, not
Graham
you,
cracker
just
crust.
like a space.
It also kind of sounds like a guy's version of
strawberry Jell-O.
A fake
Whipped
softie.
It's just like,
Now I'm thinking about dessert.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I need takeout.
All right. So as I was saying, I had a plan,
You had a plan.
but it didn't come through. I couldn't get the editing done. So before I get into just random headlines, I think you wanted to talk about.
There's been some stuff bubbling. I don't know how much you've been exposed to or have read and talked about, watched about how the MeToo movement has affected the people that consider themselves atheists and are a part of the community, if you can call it that.
I'm gonna get myself in so much trouble.
Why?
Okay, so when MeToo first started, one of the few things that I did, like I sent out some messages to a couple of friends. I'm like, this is gonna fucking turn into a witch hunt fast. And we, like, as much as we are a community or not a community of atheists, we're going to get affected too.
Yeah.
And I was at ReasonCon, and so I was part of that whisper gallery of people that had heard about Lawrence Krauss. Like, just be aware.
Right.
Make good choices.
Yeah.
Warn other people if you can. So I've been part of that. And I'm also friends with somebody right now who is going through a lot of retroactive Me Too shit, and I'm in his camp. So, like, I'm not the best person to ask because I'm not unbiased in a lot of different ways.
I think we all have our own biases, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll talk about it, but
yeah, I'm in a position where I have a friend, like maybe even the same one you're talking about, that has had some stuff come back and has kind of been abandoned by a lot of people he considered friends, and where I'm not ready to do that. I don't blame people who do in a way, but I'm not going to abandon somebody that I still value as a human. Right. And well,
I still get to place my own, I get to take everybody else's perspectives into evaluation, but it's still at the end of the day, my own judgment.
Right.
It's my own call to make is to, will I still be this person's friend or not?
Mm-hmm.
I remember, we had multiple discussions last year about whether or not we were going to have Richard Carrier on. And he has had some allegations against him, and he is currently in a lawsuit against people who have written about those allegations. So I don't want to say a ton of things about it, but we kind of as a group decided that we would not promote him. And I feel as a person with a platform that I do have a responsibility to maybe not promote somebody that's been in these positions in the past, but I still, as a human, I can't abandon people I care about. So it's like these two things. Like I can't promote somebody who's been accused in a way, but I also can't abandon them. So it's kind of a weird dynamic.
I'd actually really like to hear like all of the hosts kind of give their own perspectives on how they're feeling about this whole thing right now, because it's huge. It's going to blow up. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Like what do we do? What do you think? How are you reacting? I think it's really important to actually talk about it, not just get reactionary, but actually have conversation.
Yeah, it's because, well, I know that there's instances where like even people around accused people are questioning themselves and whether they should be reacting the way they are, and how can we necessarily make help the person make amends for doing wrong in the past or whatnot. Like, it is an interesting, troubling. Like, I don't know where we should be. It's one of these really weird areas.
There's also the element of, so somebody makes an accusation, right? So you either believe them or you don't, right? I think most of us tend to err towards, my instinct is to err towards believing somebody who says they've been victimized.
Yeah.
Now, then we get into gray areas, because let's say I believe somebody, but we end up having to making these judgment calls on how bad was this, right? Like, so if you look at somebody like whatever, like the Bill Cosby's, that's really fucking bad. Right. I believe you. He's a horrible human being. That's easy. Right? Yeah. But the shades of gray become really hard. Like the Aziz Ansari's become really hard, right? Because I believe what was written in the article.
Yep.
But it certainly wasn't on level with Bill Cosby.
Right.
I don't think it didn't seem like it was criminal.
No.
Was it yucky behavior? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Does it mean I'll never watch one of his comedy specials again? Maybe not. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it becomes like, you know, there's such a spectrum here. And then of course on the other side of it, I think it is a legitimate thing to worry about people. Yeah, the witch hunt aspect of it, the being able to it is a very powerful thing to be able to destroy somebody's reputation. Or their career by making an accusation, and whether or not, and even if the accusation is believed by the victim, maybe you know what I mean. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe they perceived it in a different way. Maybe it was a miscommunication. You know, it's really hard, and it's it's difficult. Sorry.
So you all know people who are like put up with a lot of shit, and on the other end of the spectrum, you also know people that just claim victimhood.
Yes.
In whatever scenario as often as possible. So then there's that whole thing that you have to throw in too, is not only do you have to look at who is getting blamed, but you also have to look at who's blaming them, and you still have to make your own value judgments. And that's like it's hard. Like you said, it's not a black and white scenario. It's not an easy thing.
So there was one big eye-opening case for me was several years ago. There was a Canadian radio show host named
Jeanne
Ikerd. Thank you. I was about to name a guy from work who has a similar name, which I'm glad I didn't say his name.
Don't do that.
Jeanne Ikerd, not the guy from work. Sorry, Jeanne. No. Sorry. No, that guy. Anyway, so it was kind of as I remember, like he did some things that were bad and criminal. And he ended up getting acquitted for, I don't know, to me, dumb reasons. But anyway, so I think he was actually a pretty bad guy. But I read a really interesting blog article at the time where this woman wrote, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, I gotta let the courts handle this. I'm going to reserve my judgment until court decides, blah, blah, blah. But the thing about that is that what she wrote in the blog was, no, I mean, I'm allowed to have an opinion. I'm allowed to read what these women say have happened to them and say, yeah, I believe you. And since I believe that that's what happened, that's shitty. And you're a piece of shit, right? Like, I'm allowed to say it. I'm allowed to come to that conclusion. I'm allowed to have that opinion, right? And I strongly believe it. I strongly believe that. And he was acquitted in court, and I think it's despicable because I think he clearly did it.
Yep.
It was clearly criminal. And it was, anyway, so it was terrible. But on the other hand, there has to be something, if you can just destroy somebody's reputation online by making an accusation, that's terrible too. It's a really, I don't want that either.
That's the part of the witch hunt that I was talking about. Yeah. Is like, it's so easy to do because, and now especially that we're so being sensitive to, oh, hey, women have been being sexually harassed in really shitty ways for a long time.
Yeah, like, who is this news to? Like, I don't even get, like,
men.
Like, you know, Aaron Rabbi, we had him on the show, he podcaster, and he posted on Facebook, what did he say? He said, any women who've ever been the beneficiaries of a whisper network, please let me know. I'm really interested in this. I'm like, dude, This is every woman ever. This is every job I've ever gone to, every department I've ever moved to, every university. Yeah. You get, you know, you say, I'm thinking about working for this prof, and you get pulled aside, and people say, no, you don't want to work for him. He's sleazy, and he, you know, something weird happened with an undergrad last year. I don't really know exactly what, but you don't get involved with him. And that's just everywhere ever. Women talk. That's it. There's no
and there
whisper network.
Customers that you have to be really careful around. Like it's the whisper network. Like, we've got this.
What the fuck are you talking about? Has anyone ever? I exist. Like, of course. Like,
right. I have boobs.
I don't live under a rock. So yes, of course. What are you talking about, dude?
I think it's really interesting how different people have reacted to it. Like, I think some people are worried that it's becoming a witch hunt because you have the different ends of the spectrum with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Aziz Ansari. Like, those are two very different things, but I think it's an important part of the conversation that we're starting to have, and that women are starting to feel empowered to speak about their experiences. And I think the men and some women who are becoming defensive about these stories are worried that, like, they don't understand that these accusations aren't always criminal. It's not always a charge that's going to be laid.
You can't always say, "Oh, we'll wait till it comes out in court."
Right.
No,
right.
because it's not the same thing. And I think we're having this conversation just like we're having conversations about gun violence in the States, and we're having conversations about truth and reconciliation in Canada, and we're having these conversations because we're feeling empowered to speak about our experiences. And I don't think it's necessarily like I get frustrated with the people that are trying to shout down the victims that are coming forward, because it's really hard to talk about those things. I mean, for me, thinking back to the different experiences that I've had, and the sexual assault that retroactively I realized that, oh, okay, so that's what that was, you know, and realizing, okay, I can talk about these things, and I think it's important that we continue to have this conversation, like you said, and not reactively and not in a dramatic, accusatory kind of a way, but in just
there's
sharing.
There's a lot of gray area.
There is, but I think it's genuinely important to have a conversation about what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with. Lawrence Krauss thought it was okay to rub the palm of his hand up someone's skirt, and she didn't confront him, but I mean, and he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. And I think we're at a point, hopefully, it might just be a blip on the radar, where we can talk about those things. And the men that are like, well, I can't even flirt with women now. Well, fuck that shit. You're just not doing it right.
You better,
If you think you're that much of an asshole, and that you can just like feel somebody up, and then they're going to be like, I want to sleep with you now. Like, no,
but it's not how it works. But I think you're making a really good point, is that women do need to be much more direct about, like,
definitely
about how we communicate with other people. Like, dude, like, that's just not okay. And be able to lay that down. And the other part of that is you don't get to have buyer's remorse. You know, like, I've made some fucking stupid decisions, and I'm just like,
well, regret, you mean?
Well, you know, or just like, I thought I wanted to take him home, and then that turned out to be like kind of a bad decision. I like kicked him, like, whatever it is. I kicked him out. Like, I had the sex.
I question whether people are actually considering that to be sexual assault when they regret having sex with somebody. It's like, oh,
no, I think that that's part of the witch hunt. Is I think that there are way too many women that are saying, like, that are calling buyer's remorse.
I don't know.
Sexual assault.
I don't find that myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like there is that wide boundary that is very clearly defined, but there's that whole, like, in the middle gray area.
There certainly are gray areas. I wonder if we can I don't like to use the term witch hunt because so many of these things turn out to be like entirely true and like confirmed by multiple sources. So it feels like when like I would to use the term witch hunt almost seems like almost the wrong analogy.
Right, because a witch isn't real and a rapist or somebody who's gone too far is. But you know what, maybe a better way to say it is the public shaming, right? Like public shaming makes me uncomfortable because it's so mob mentality. It's so me, and you know, it's so not evidence-based. It's so not giving people a chance. There's no way, it's very difficult to fight against that, you know, like in terms of your reputation and what effects that has on you. So it's the public shaming generally as a tool for, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't know, personally, like it's one thing to be honest when somebody has, or, you know, to accuse somebody if somebody has done something illegal, like something that is genuinely, but I don't know, it makes me, I don't know. It makes me genuinely like when the MeToo first came out and all the women on my Facebook were changing their profile picture to say Me Too. Right? Like obviously,
wait. You're saying like first came out like within the last year, as opposed
that's
to,
what I mean.
Was it like 2008?
Yeah, when it actually.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, but like when I first heard of it,
when the movement first started.
Yeah, yes. I personally I didn't want to jump on the bandwagon, even though it's true, and even though I don't. Not like I didn't like the people who were doing it. I didn't agree with them. I just didn't want to do it. I just felt like it was too bandwagony, and I wasn't comfortable with it. Like I got a listener question, and then after we deal with
you have listeners?
We have one.
We have one. My nephew.
And after we deal with his question, I want to ask a question of my own.
I have something to say after that.
So Lachlan asks, what about the bias that being a fan of someone's work can have? How does Jeannie deal with that? If you really like someone and they ended up doing something or was accused of something, how do you deal with that going forward? Do you still like their stuff, kind of thing?
Well, I guess I'm not going to call him out directly. Like there have been some accusations from a director creator that I enjoy in the TV media or movie media. And he's been called out, but that doesn't make his work any less for me. I can still roll that back.
And I still have to take,
I will neither confirm nor deny, Senator.
He's been accused of stuff.
Well, he definitely was unfaithful to his wife.
Yeah. Well, I don't really get involved there.
Polyamory. Just have the conversation, work it out.
That I don't really. I mean, anyways.
So I get like in there are some ways in which case he has been publicly called a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And like I get that, but that doesn't make the fact that I don't find value in the work that he's created.
Right.
I'm going to say like maybe a little less with Bill Cosby.
I can't watch that. That's different. That's not being unfaithful to his wife. That's drugging and raping dozens of women. Right. That's a different thing. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One's illegal. One's just kind of a shitty thing to do to one person that wasn't me. Like, can I? When this question got raised when Jeanne Ikerd was accused, and this was discussed publicly in the CBC. What ended up being decided by the CBC and listeners was to keep the archives of Q, and people can still listen to it, and because that's still there, and those interviews are still good, and it is what it is, and they can still be. And I think everyone was like comfortable with that, like even though the dude's a jerk. Anyway, sorry.
I think no. You're on the right path. I'm sorry. Keep going. Yes.
It's just that in the artistic medium, when you're not doing something as a solo artist, there's a lot of mixing of labor that goes on.
Right.
Well, just think of all the unnamed crew members and how many of them could be shitheads.
You never know. Yeah,
exactly. Like Bob the Gaffer.
could be just awful.
Asshole. Bob the Gaffer. Don't even get me started.
Bob the Gaffer's.
Can I say
pictures?
Can I say something?
No, I'm kidding.
Eyewitness testimony.
I think where you get a lot of guys being defensive of the people who are getting accused, like especially men, is that they're worried about like has something in their own past, has that behavior, if they push too hard and you know, is that the problem, you know, like, because they're thinking, oh, did I ever do that? You know, like, I think that's
men are trash.
Well, no, but
some women can be terrible too.
I just think that, I think that, But I think with men worry that they have done something unintentionally in their past that they don't even know, like they didn't know at the time, and maybe if it was, you know, published on Vox, they'd be like, oh shit, that's super embarrassing. Like that, in retrospect, but it didn't seem bad at the time. And also, I think a lot of men have the perception. Did you see that monologue by what's his face, atheist guy, kind of a jerk, because it's shown on HBO?
Gervais?
No,
Bill Maher.
He had this whole spiel about how it's only sexual harassment when the woman's not interested. Right? Like if a woman, a man, she's really interested. I mean, in a lot of cases, a man is really interested and he's
Oh, sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I just followed around the wrong way.
It's all good. Okay. But I'm just saying, like let's say, you know, like something even as innocuous as, hey, do you want to go out, or are you interested in, or you know, interested in doing this, or sort of touching somebody's shoulder, or whatever, you know, some sort of relatively innocuous contact. You know, it could be considered harassment if it's really unwanted by somebody that you're really not interested in, and it could be considered very desirable by somebody you are interested in, and it's all just you don't. And Bill's argument was, hey, if I don't know if I'm that guy or not until I make that overture.
I assure you, I didn't need a hashtag to make me anxious about whether or not I'm going too far.
But I think that's part of the conversation.
Exactly.
I think that's an important part of the conversation. Like you were talking about. In non-monogamous relationships, like you said, it's hard, and the queer community has advice for the monogamous community in that there's something to be said for communicating what's okay and what's not okay, and those conversations happen, and I think this is a symptom of that, and I think one of the points I wanted to make was, just because somebody has a brilliant mind and has done a couple shitty things to women doesn't totally negate the books that they've written. The fact that
they're really good science communicator. And
I think that's important. I think we can't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. If somebody's completely unapologetic about being shitty to a certain group, I think we need to acknowledge that, and I think we need to hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable for their actions, and not completely just ignore that part of them, but I don't think that I don't think that we should completely disregard them as human beings. If you feel bad for what you did too, if you are legitimately sorry and you're legitimately making an effort to improve your behavior and treat people better, I think that should also be recognized.
I think part of the symptom is so if we're going to talk about Lawrence Krauss, you've seen Lawrence Krauss. He is not he's not a 10.
Conventionally attractive.
Let's just say.
That's a fair way to put that.
No. But I've known lots of scientists like him, and when those accusations came up, I'm like, yep. That's true. Like, I just knew from his personality. I've heard him interviewed. That guy is, I've known so many scientists like that. They are so full of themselves. Like, no. Yeah. There was another very famous scientist named Jeff Marcy. Same fucking shit. Famous astronomer. Same shit 2 years ago. Absolutely. No question. Met him before. I'm like, yep, those things are true. He is that full of himself. Absolutely. No question. Sorry, continue.
No, that's okay. So my point with this is, so say you grew up your life as Lawrence Krauss, and all of a sudden you're fucking famous. Like, you have books, you're being asked to be a guest speaker. That kind of shit can go to your head.
Yes.
And no. Guys like him were always like that. I promise you, I know them in grad school. They are dipshits. They're little dipshits. They have nothing going for them. Okay. And yet
too many Pop Rocks blowjobs.
Perfect fucking, they have so much confidence in themselves. It's that confidence that propels them to that success. Really. It's pervasive, especially in science.
The unwarranted confidence of these cis
but then it
male.
Becomes, they grow right the fuck into it. It is not something he acquired. It's something he always had. And then when the recognition came, he was like, yeah, of course. I'm owed it. There's no imposter syndrome here.
No, but that's exactly my point, is like, I'm owed it. Like all of a sudden, like chicks are throwing themselves at me, or dudes are like,
or they're being really nice, and I assume that they're throwing themselves at me.
Finally, everyone's treating me as I deserve to be treated. That's what it is.
Right. So I think that that's part of the whole problem, is that like in some ways, and not just like this industry of podcastery atheism, but
so not to throw out a buzzword, but is this just a product of toxic masculinity? This idea that men are owed this kind of thing, and they imagine themselves as owed this. And
I bet women with that sense too. It's just, I think it's just narcissism.
Yeah, I have
just
to.
plain old.
I think it's a power thing, though.
DSM narcissism.
It's a power thing. I mean, Mariah Carey is being sued by her bodyguard for inappropriate behavior, and
that's true.
And Terry Crews has struggled with his own issues, being sexually.
Adam Sandler's
his agent.
Yeah. And Brendan Fraser recently came out as being. There was an incident with Brendan Fraser that essentially shut down his acting career. And so, I mean, it's not just women that are coming forward that these things are happening to, which lends itself to the idea that it's a power thing as much as it's a gender.
Yes, exactly. That was where I was going, was this really is a power dynamic shift. And once you haven't had it for long enough, and then you finally get it, you don't know what to do with it because you don't have the coping skills.
And sometimes when you're in a
you're
powerful,
just a dick.
yeah, and sometimes when you're in a powerful position, you often go unchallenged. If you're a celebrity, and you have a group of people who are just hanging off your every word and doing everything and only giving you red jelly beans and pushing you in an office chair to the stage so you don't have, and toweling you off after a shower. I mean, sometimes you get to that point where you just don't, there's nobody challenging you. Nobody's saying, that's a fucking dick move. Why did you do that?
Right. Well, there's a reason that there are whisper communities within the community. Where the reason that, like, nobody gets challenged is because nobody's going to step up and say, like, did I just watch you slide your hand up my girlfriend's skirt?
Yeah.
And she's not going to say anything because, it's that guy. And he's not going to say anything because, well, she didn't.
Yeah.
I think another reason women don't, like, people, why didn't you say something sooner? A lot of people have previous trauma, right, that they're dealing with. And so then now it becomes very difficult to, you kind of become fight, or freeze, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you just, you get like, and you just don't know what to do because you're re-traumatized. You're just like, this is how I respond when this happens.
I just, the whole, why didn't you say anything question, it just seems like such a victim blaming, it's just such a shitty thing to say.
One thing that I came to realize after deconverting and after kind of no longer being a part of a patriarchal religion, I find that I have to kind of fight against putting men on a pedestal of sorts, like having like there's the four horsemen of atheism, and okay, it was almost a natural progression to kind of like, okay, I'm going to watch all the Sam Harris shit that I can find and all the Dawkins
These are my
stuff.
new gods.
Exactly. And I'm going to put this person above, like Matt Dillahunty says, don't have heroes. And he just balks at people saying, you're my hero, man. You're my hero. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I've had to really come to terms with the fact that my upbringing, the religion that I was a part of, the family that I grew up in, it was really strictly patriarchal. And there were times when I was becoming involved physically with men that I didn't realize that I could say no. I didn't realize that there were situations more than I would like to freely admit that I felt like I had no other choice but to go along with it. And my head was saying no, but I couldn't get out of that situation. And yes, by all accounts,
because it's male attention.
Well, in a way it is. And you feel like in hindsight, I realize, holy fucking shit, I could have just gone home. I could have just said, you know what, I'm not into this. I could have just said, I need to get a cab and go.
Yeah.
I need to.
Couldn't.
move your hand away from my whatever. But I couldn't. I felt frozen. And in hindsight, I'm like reliving these experiences with the new lens that I see it through. And I'm just feeling sick. And I feel like there's a lot of women that are coming to those conclusions. I haven't spoken to them personally, but I feel like there's those people.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
That are like, oh, wow. And I think that's why we're getting these articles about Aziz Ansari, because there's those that is just it's the norm. It's more common than we're letting ourselves believe.
And if the point of an article like that about Aziz Ansari is to let women know, hey, look at this through this lens, not let's tear this guy down so he never works again. That's a different thing.
Well,
that's a conversation rather than a
Did
witch
you
hunt.
read the article, The Cat Person, the story that woman wrote?
Yeah.
You did?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that was a similar article. Like it was a nonfiction, or it was fictional. It wasn't.
Wow. I mean, but it rang so true for so many people. Like,
there was a lot of, and that was part of the realization for me. It's like, holy shit.
If I may, we talked about this last night at a skeptic group I was at, where a lot of people are coming out. A lot of women in the skeptics are coming out of situations like Angela, where this is a very male-dominated scene.
Right.
And they've dealt with it just kind of like Angela did, with it just assumed. Right. And I think the skeptics owes it to them to be better than that. I think we have to be.
I think we do too. But I think
immediately critical.
There's a lot of people that are expecting that when somebody comes out with their experience, they're expecting the video that Christina Rad released today. She speaks about how the court of public opinion is different than the court of law.
Yeah.
And when you're in the skeptic atheist community, there's an expectation of evidence of and concrete videotape or photographs, but eyewitness testimony is also admissible in court, and previous complaints and previous history, like whether
speaks to behavior, sort of thing.
Exactly, those things are admissible in court, and I think that there's the nature of the skeptic community / movement, if you can call it that, is such that people aren't readily accepting of these accounts because there's no conventional evidence.
Well, also just to be understood, most of these things don't take place in a position of concrete evidence.
It kind of reminds me of how in Saudi Arabia you can only convict somebody of rape if like 3 other men observed it.
Right?
Like it's the same sort of like, what, you did not videotape your rape? What's wrong with you? Like,
I didn't think to position the bright lighting.
Oh, see that?
Sorry.
That looked like consent there to me. That's good enough for me.
Yep.
But
I don't know if this ties in, and I'll try to make this really brief.
For sure.
I think we're probably trying. But I really think that part of MeToo, we exist in a culture of dichotomies, and I get MeToo and like the passion and the rage and the pointing that needs to happen, even if it's extraneous, because I think of like what we're trying to find is the middle.
Exactly.
And so what we have is we have a male dominated society that's been going on for so long. And this is like why like the 60s and 70s feminist movement became so strident. And this is why Black Lives Matter is mattering, is because the further the pendulum swings to the opposite ends of the spectrum, the stronger the voices have to be on the other end. So even if it's not like my thing, even if it's not something that I'm 100% endorsing, like I get it. Like believe me, like I have lived part of this life, but I don't have to be that strident against it or for it to try to find a better middle. But I respect the people that do it, because they have to be the strong voices that help us find the middle.
Yeah.
and that's why we talk, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. I think that's an excellent point. And with that, we're going to let you go and we're going to go to our music break, which will be Cornflake Girl.
Long enough for me to pee?
Yeah, or if you're still up for coming back, yeah, for sure. You definitely long enough for
it's like a 15-minute break.
Yeah, it's about 15 minutes.
15 minutes? Jesus. Okay.
We got...
you don't have to come back.
12 minutes.
Well, I can pee actually. That fast. No, I'm coming back. This is fun. Unless you want to boot me out, in which case that's fine too.
No, if you want to stick around,
you're on the island. You're voted on.
So this is where we'll take the break for music.
Thanks for talking to us regardless.
For live listeners and patrons, you can enjoy the next few minutes, and we'll be back. For regular feed subscribers, this is where we'll end the Skeptic Studio. Remember to check out the Shift to Reason Radio next week to hear listener feedback, new patrons, iTunes reviews, and our reading from a book, article, or Facebook post. This week's music: Cornflake Girl by Tori Amos, No Light, No Light by Florence and the Machine, and Now or Never by Halsey. Okay, I don't have enough time to do the entire outro, but I do want to thank you, Jeannie, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will try to find some links to stuff that you've done.
Actually, the only thing, just link Opening Up, Tristan Taormino. Link that book.
Okay. Consider it done.
Okay.
For live listeners, stick around for the after show. You can go to brainstormafterhours.com and listen to the bonus content before it goes patrons only. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast, with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.